Welcome to the Aligned Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Pooja Venkatraman. I'm a double Harvard grad, former BCG consultant, and now an executive coach for high achievers. On this podcast, we are going to tackle the 4 key things that you need to figure out in order to live a life of aligned ambition. Those 4 things are stress, productivity, performance, and purpose. We are going to make sure that you're driving your car in the direction that you actually want to go. That is the purpose part. We're also going to make sure that your progress along the road is consistent and effective. That's the productivity and performance part. And we're going to make sure that the fuel you're pouring into your tank isn't so noxious that it's filling your car with fumes and making the whole ride miserable. That is the stress part. Because if you can tackle those 4 things, stress, productivity, performance, and purpose, you can build the life and the career that you actually want. Not the life you think you're supposed to have, not the life that burns you out or doesn't fit quite right, but the life you actually want. One that fulfills your biggest ambitions and unleashes your fullest potential without sacrificing your sanity, your relationships, your authenticity, or your paycheck. A life that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside. That's what aligned ambition is all about. Let's get started. Hey guys, today I want to talk to you about the concept you can be ambitious about anything. So why do I think this is so important to talk about? Because I know that everyone that listens to this is high achievers. They have big ambitions already, but there's a phenomenon that I see among my clients and among high achievers in general, which is we have this assumption that ambition means a very narrow set of things, that it means usually a career or money related set of things, right? That ambition means getting the corner office, getting a C-suite title, making a certain amount of money. If you're starting your own company, it means becoming a unicorn or having a huge exit. We have this unconscious assumption that ambition equates to these kind of very specific outcomes and these very specific and narrow areas of your life. Right. And then the phenomenon that I see is high achievers who have succeeded in a lot of those areas already will sometimes hit one of 2 points. Either they will hit a point where they want to actually be ambitious about things outside of work, right? A lot of times this happens when people have kids and they're like, wait, I have some thoughts about the kind of parent I want to be and how available I want to be and how present I want to be and how I want to spend time with my kids and what parenting is going to look like. They have some real kind of goals and ambitions with the kind of parent they want to be, right? So often this happens when they want to be ambitious about things outside of work. That's one scenario. The other scenario where this happens is when people are not excited about the traditional career path anymore. Right? Where they're not excited about climbing the corporate ladder, or where if they're starting their own company, they're not excited about making it a venture-backed like tech startup that's going to be a massive unicorn. They don't want to do the traditional things. Or if you're in consulting or banking or you're a lawyer, you're like, I don't want to be a partner at the firm anymore or an MD at the firm anymore. So there's this kind of traditional success career path that you've been on, and you're not excited about continuing down that path anymore, right? So when one of those 2 things happen, either when people get something new in their personal life that they want to be really ambitious about, often it's children, but it can also be something like a health issue that you're personally dealing with, aging parents that you have to care for, something else. But they have something that's not career related, that's in their personal life that they have real goals and ambitions for. Or when they're just looking at their career path that they've been on and they're like, wait, I'm not excited about this particular path in this ladder anymore. Because we have this narrowly defined kind of definition of ambition, we think, okay, well, now that I want to be ambitious about my personal life, or now that I'm not excited about the career path I'm on anymore, that means I've lost my ambition. Or that means that I am resigning myself to a lower ambition life. Right? Because we've defined ambition as getting a certain title, making a certain amount of money, working at a certain company, whatever it might be. And so if you're like, well, I'm not aiming for that anymore, goodbye ambition. I guess that's me. Now I'm this medium type of person that doesn't aim for big things anymore. And bummer, because that's not really who I want to be. That's not how I think of myself as. That's not what's exciting to me. But that's life. Because I'm not going after the C-suite title or the corner office or the big bonus paycheck or whatever it might be anymore. Right. So that's an outcome of our brains unconsciously defining ambition as this very, very narrow thing. Right. And that's not our fault, because I do think our society and our culture really does a lot to reinforce that ambition. I talked about this a little bit in a previous episode as well. Right. But if you think about who are the people that are interviewed on podcasts or on TV shows, who are the people that show up in panels at conferences or who give talks, who are the people that publish books, who are the prominent voices in our society, the people that are held up as examples, it's people that have achieved achieved tremendous career ambitions, right? It tends to be founders and top executives and people that have like succeeded along the narrowly prescribed path of ambition. That's who gets elevated and lifted up and held up as an example. And what we don't see are just other examples of people who are ambitious, people who are like, I'm really ambitious in my community, in my parenting, in my family, in the causes that I advocate for. We just don't tend to see those people getting elevated as much. And so it's very normal, right, that our brain continues to reinforce this narrow definition of ambition. And that once our actual ambitions, once our actual internal goals and desires stray outside of those narrow boundaries, our brain's like, well, okay, I guess I'm not ambitious anymore. And like, that's a bummer that I have to be this medium person now. So if that's you, right, if you're kind of feeling that tension, I wanted to call it out because I see a lot of people feeling this way when they hit these points, right, where you don't want to be ambitious about the traditional career path anymore. It's not appealing to you as much. They think, okay, well, I guess my ambition's gone. And I want to talk to you about how to think about this scenario. First, I want you to really think about, what are you ambitious about? Because I'm guessing you are an ambitious person, right? You like to do things really well. You like to do things to a high level of quality. You have a vision for what you want to accomplish, what good looks like, and you are excited and motivated to make that vision happen. Like, that's fun. It's fun for you to do something really well and set a high bar and smash it, right? That's the kind of person you are. That to me is what is an ambitious person, someone who enjoys doing that kind of work. So I want you to just think about, what are you excited about doing really well? What are you excited about knocking out of the park? That's the first question to ask yourself, and really just define, what is the area of your life where you have that feeling? If it's not that normal traditional career, the place where we normally kind of label as ambition, what are you excited about? It might be your parenting. It might be your relationship with your spouse. It might be your relationship with your family and your family dynamics, bringing everyone closer, resolving certain conflicts. It might be your community. Maybe you're involved in some of the local issues and things that are going on. Maybe you want to bring your community closer. It might be causes that you want to advocate for. It might be personal goals that you have, health and fitness, sobriety, your morning routine. There's so many areas of your life. It could even be hobbies, right? You could be like, I really want to read a bunch of novels. I want to pick up a certain craft. I want to play a certain sport. Life is so big and so rich. And there are so many areas that you can be ambitious about. There's so many things that you can get really excited about and say, hey, I'm gonna have a ton of fun doing this really freaking well. So that's the first thing I want you to do, is just to even define, what's that area that you're really excited about? And it might be an area that's outside of your career altogether, right? And it's in your personal life or in your community life, et cetera. It might be that. Or it might be a career path that's not the traditional career path. And it might be like, well, I'm not excited about, continuing to climb the ladder at this tech company, but I have this idea for something else that I want to do. And that's another direction I want to take my career. So first, just define, what's that thing where you can feel the sparks of ambition, right? The area that you're actually excited about going. That's step one. Step two is to help your brain kind of connect the dots and apply the concept of ambition to even that area. So I want you to ask yourself this question, right? Whatever the area is that you picked, I want you to ask yourself, I'm going to give you a few examples of what I mean. I want you to ask yourself, well, if I could be the McKinsey partner of this, what would that look like? If I could be VP of product at Google of this, what would that look like? If I could be the unicorn startup founder with a massive exit of this area, what would that look like? If I could be the Warren Buffett of this area, what would that look like? So I want you to pick a title or a person that is like really heavily loaded with the association of like traditional ambition, right? Like McKinsey partner, VP of product at Google, Sam Altman, unicorn startup founder, Warren Buffett, MD at Goldman, whatever it is that really resonates for you and your brain when it comes to traditional ambition, where your brain just lights up and it's like, oh my God, that's the pinnacle. That's the top of the mountain. And then I want you to ask your brain that question of like, okay, let's say it's Warren Buffett. What would being the Warren Buffett of parenting look like? What would the McKinsey partner of this alternate career path that I'm excited about exploring, what would that look like? What would being the unicorn startup founder of community engagement and community involvement, what would that look like? So what we're doing with step two is we're trying to kind of open the aperture, open your brain's mind up a little bit, just to kind of help it see, I can be ambitious about anything. I don't just have to be ambitious about the traditional career paths and the kind of traditional arena where ambition tends to be ascribed. I can bring that same drive and fire and vision and desire to do big things and just the fun of doing that I can bring that to any area. And so I love that question of like taking something that's loaded with all the associations of traditional ambition and then applying that to an area where you don't necessarily think of ambition, right, as it being an area where ambition can be applied and expressed. And so that's the second thing I want you to do. Step one, you've defined what's the arena, what's the area of your life where you're like, ooh, that sounds fun to be ambitious there. It sounds fun to like do things really well. That's step one. And then step two is asking yourself, what would it look like to be the McKinsey partner of that area, the unicorn startup founder of that area, the Warren Buffett of that area, right? Help your brain connect the dots and bring that high, like kind of ambition and drive and fun of traditional ambition into this other area where your brain doesn't tend to typically apply it, right? So that's step two. Step three that I want you to do is as you're kind of getting into the nitty gritty, right? Let's say, for example, it's like parenting and your nuclear family. You want that to run really well. You want to be an awesome parent. You want to be an awesome spouse, and you want sort of the ops of your house to run really well. I'm just going to give that as the example of that's the thing that you want to be really ambitious about. As you're doing so, as you kind of look at that arena, right? And as you look at all the work that is required to actually make that happen, to achieve your goals in that area, step three is for you to validate the work. Right. And I think this is one of the reasons that things that are outside of traditional career get sort of written off as not that ambitious. One of the reasons for that is we think that the work involved in making that happen is like just admin, just whatever, just your personal life, right? We don't validate the work as like, wow, this is real work. This takes real thought, real teamwork, real problem solving, real creativity, real leadership. We don't validate and elevate the work that's required to achieve that goal. Instead, we're sort of like, well, if you're not launching a massive product in a tech company, if you're not deploying a $2 billion investment, then like, I don't know, you're just doing daycare pickups or whatever. Like that's just some like admin crap that anyone can do, right? I'm saying it very strongly, but we can have those kinds of associations or connotations in our mind about what's the value and sort of achievement level of different kinds of work. But my guess is that if you actually kind of open the hood and look at the work you're doing, right? Taking this example of if your ambition is to be an awesome parent, an awesome spouse, and have really great ops running in your house, if you actually open the hood on that and you're like, what's the work that's required in doing that? Chances are you'll be like, wow, this is like a lot of really hard, creative, tough work, right? And so I want you to really sit down and validate the work, the tasks, the thinking, the creativity, the leadership that is required to achieve the goal in that area. I've had actual clients where we've sat down and done, especially around the holidays, we'll sit and do holiday planning, right? And we'll kind of think through gifts, travel plans, family dynamics. What does success look like for the holidays? How can they achieve those things? That's something I'll work on with my clients as well. And the thing that has always struck me and that I'll always try to play back to them is I am like, this problem solving and this work is not that different than the work you do in your career, right? It's the same stuff of like setting a vision, breaking it down into smaller tasks, figuring out how to get people to work together, being organized, executing, getting things done, looking for the kind of 80-20s. Where can I make this easier on myself? Where can I make this more efficient? It is so similar to the work that you do at your job, the work that you do to like have a great family life or any of these other areas. And so that's step three is I really want you to look at the work that is required to achieve big things in this non-traditional arena of ambition and validate that work. Validate it, elevate it, and really think about like, this is real work. This is not admin. This is not just like what I'm doing until I get back to my career. This is not just some low level crap, right? It is real freaking senior level work that you're doing. So I want you to validate that work. And then the next step I want you to take. So I think what a lot of people find, and I think what is very healthy, right, is you end up in a place where you're like, I'm balancing multiple ambitions, right? When you're younger, you're often just balancing one ambition. There's no balance involved at all. You're just like, I'm just trying to do really well at school, or I'm just trying to do really well at my job. And of course you have like friends and hobbies and other things, but you really have one goal. You really have one ambition, one thing you're trying to do really, really well. Everything else just kind of fits in around it and it's all good. Once you kind of get more into adulthood and you have a fuller life, and I think also it's a very healthy thing to do, is you start to kind of put your eggs in multiple baskets, right? You're not just saying all that matters is that my career goes really well and everything else, whatever, it can all kind of just be fine and manage itself. Now you have major ambitions in multiple areas. You're like, I want my career to go really well, and I want my parenting to go really well, and I want my marriage to go really well, and I want my health and fitness to go really well, and I want to have hobbies, and I want to have a great spiritual life, right? Whatever it might be, the other areas, chances are you'll have more than one, right? More than one thing that you want to do really well. And so you also have to do the work of calibrating. What does that look like to balance multiple things? What does success look like when you're trying to do 2 things really well or 3 things really well? And calibrate for yourself, because it's probably not going to look like an A triple plus across all the areas, right? Because you just don't have time. You don't have time, you don't have energy, you don't have bandwidth to do each area as well as you would do it if you were only focused on that one thing. Right now, you're spreading your efforts across multiple things, which means you have to calibrate for yourself. For example, if you're like, I want to do a great job in my career and I want to do a great job as a parent, and I want to do both of those things simultaneously, right? I'm going to keep working my career and I'm going to keep parenting at the exact same time. That means that success in your career is going to look lower than what it would look like if you were just purely focused on your career. And success in parenting is going to look lower than what it would look like if you were purely focused on parenting. Right. And so if you compare like how you're doing on career and parenting to this fantasy world where you were just focused on one of those things, it's an unfair comparison. You'll always feel like you're failing, right? You'll always feel like, oh, I'm being a terrible parent because I'm comparing myself to what if I was a stay-at-home parent, and I'm doing terrible in my career because I'm comparing myself to what if I'd never had kids and I just focused totally on my career. But that's a false comparison. That's not the choice you made, and that's not what you wanted, right? So you have to really calibrate your brain to say, okay, when I'm doing these two things together at the same time, success looks like a 80% level of parenting and an 80% level of success in my career, right? Whatever that means to you, but just to say, okay, it's actually two 80% that I'm aiming for, which it's a total of 160%, right? So I'm doing really, really well when I put it all together, but I can't get both of these to 100%. That would involve too much work, basically burning myself out and killing myself, and it doesn't really make sense. But I can't compare myself to like 100% in both areas. That's not fair. That's not the choice I've made. What I'm aiming for is 80% in both of the areas, but I'm doing them simultaneously. And then I have to step back, zoom out, and give myself credit for how the bigger picture looks and really pat myself on the back and say, damn, I'm doing 80% in both areas. That's incredible because I'm doing them simultaneously. And that's the thing I have to really give myself credit for. It doesn't make sense to say, well, I'm 80% in parenting. Let me compare that to the fantasy 100%, where if I didn't have a career, that's what parenting would look like. And I'm 80% in my career, but let me compare that to the fantasy 100% that I would have if I didn't have kids. Unfair comparisons. So you have to balance the scorecard and calibrate what does it look like? What does success look like in each individual area when I'm managing multiple big ambitions at the same time and telling myself, hey, it looks like 70%, 80%, 50% in each of these areas, but combined, it's a really big score. And I just need to get really comfortable with that's what success looks like at work, in parenting, et cetera. And I'm regularly zooming out and looking at the big picture and giving myself a lot of credit for that. What I'm not doing is comparing myself to these fantasy lands where I just was investing in one thing and just focused on one thing and then saying that's the standard of success, because that's not the reality. That's not what I'm focused on. That's what I wanted to talk to you guys about today is first off, just this concept. You can be ambitious about anything. Ambition does not have to be restricted just to the traditional career paths. It's in the traditional career paths as well. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But the traditional career paths are just a small part of your life altogether. And they're a small slice of what you can possibly do in your career, right? It's just a narrow part of the world. It's a great part of the world, but like the world is a lot bigger than just your career, and your career is a lot bigger and has a lot more possibilities than just the specific couple of paths that you see other people walking. And so what I don't want you to do is just because you don't want those traditional paths anymore to think, okay, well, game over for me. Right? No more ambition. I guess I'm not an ambitious person anymore. And then you start kind of shading down your effort and shading down your sense of what's possible for yourself and shading down your goals because you've just decided, hey, I guess I'm not an ambitious person anymore because I don't want to be a McKinsey partner. Or I don't want to be an SVP at this big corporation, or I don't want to do this big thing. I don't want to be a unicorn startup founder. And so, okay, if I don't want that, I guess I'm just not ambitious anymore. I don't think that's true. Because I know what's inside you. I know the fire that's inside you. I know that you love to do things really well, have a big vision, achieve it, and just honestly have so much fun doing that. And you really feel that to be a creative expression of who you are and what you're here to do in this world, the mark you're here to make in this world, really seeing achievement as expression, right? Expression of your truest essence. I know that that's the kind of person you are, right? That you don't get to where you are if you don't have that inside of you, right? There's always external pressures and things as well. But my guess is you are that kind of person that just has that fire inside you. And you're like, damn it, I just like doing things really well. And I get a lot of satisfaction around setting a vision, figuring out how to make it happen, making it happen, and just running the journey all along the way. It's really fun for me, right? That doesn't go away. Just because you don't want to be a McKinsey partner or an SVP at PepsiCo or whatever it might be, that's that ambition, that trait that you have inside you doesn't go away. So I wanted to give you that process to say, okay, let me define the area, either the area of my life or the alternate career path where I do want to express that ambition that's inside me. Let me help my brain connect the dots and kind of ask that thought exercise question of like, what does being the McKinsey partner of this area look like? What does being the VP, the SVP of Google, like in this area look like? Help your brain connect the dots and really angle that fire of ambition at this area as well. And think of, okay, what would that vision be? What would that look like? What would I go do? And then validating that work, elevating and validating that work, not telling yourself it's just admin, it's just low level work, it's just like some stuff you do until you get back to your real career, but really validating that work because it's real work. And then helping your brain calibrate. Helping it calibrate and balance having multiple big ambitions running at the same time without beating yourself up by holding you to unfair standards on what any one of those individual ambitions should be looking like or what the progress should be looking like, but really having that kind of consolidated scorecard to say, okay, well, if we have 3 big things running at the same time and each of them is going at 50%, fantastic. It's 150%. You're crushing it. You're doing great, right? So giving yourself that validation as well. So if what I'm saying to you is resonating, right? If you're noticing those little kind of whispers in your brain as you're walking the path that you're on and you're like, wait, you don't have the fire anymore to be walking this path. I'm not as excited as I used to be to climb this particular mountain, right? And reach the pinnacle of this path I'm on, whether it's because you have other things in your personal life you're excited about, or whether it's because you want to be on a different path altogether. If you're feeling that like the fire is dying down, it doesn't mean the fire is dying down altogether inside you, but it does mean you have to kind of get thoughtful about where is the fire sparking for me and where do I want to aim it and how do I support myself, validate myself in aiming it in that direction. If you want some help in doing all that, right? And really crystallizing where is it that I want to go that I'm super excited about, in validating for yourself that that's a real thing. It's a real legitimate thing that you can go after and you can make it as big of a thing as any of the traditional career paths that you can be on. You can make it as big of a mountain, as big of a pinnacle as any of the, kind of the normal pinnacles that are shown in our society. You can make that as big of a thing. And then doing that constant day-to-day work, right? Of validating yourself, trusting yourself, validating the work, supporting yourself, and like really having your own back. If you want some support in doing all of that, I want you to book a free coaching consult with me and let's talk about it. Let's work through what's the purpose and the area that you want to be focused on. Let's work through your productivity and your performance and making yourself as effective as possible. And let's work on the fuel that you are pouring in your tank and making sure that it is security and self-trust and flow and a sense of purpose. And it's not stress, anxiety, scarcity, insecurity, any of those things that have just a shorter runway and burn you out while you're doing it. So if the things I'm saying to you are resonating and you're thinking, hey, I would actually love some support in thinking through all of this, like listening to these ideas has kind of cracked something open in my brain and it's made me realize there's a can of worms here that I need to kind of work through, and you want to work through them effectively and quickly and efficiently with someone that works with a lot of clients that are in your exact situation, has a lot of pattern recognition, and a lot of things that I can do to help you and make this path easier for you. Come talk to me. Book a free coaching consult. The link is in the episode description. I would love to chat. I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Aligned Ambition podcast. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already and share this podcast with anyone you know that you think could use it. If you'd like to explore working together in a one-on-one coaching engagement with me, book a free consult call at poojavcoaching.com/contact. You can grab that link in the episode description. And if you have any questions, thoughts, or topics you want me to cover in this podcast, shoot me an email at pooja@poojavcoaching.com. You can grab that in the episode description too. Talk to you soon.